I'm Teddy Abrams, and I am the music director of your Louisville Orchestra, or as my dear friend Jecorey Arthur might say, Louisville's Orchestra. And that I am here, as I said, with one of my favorite collaborators and closest friends here in Louisville. We've been working together for 7 years. It's Jecorey 1200 Arthur, who has many roles in Louisville as an educator, as a classical percussionist, as a hip hop artist, and also as a Metro Council member, the newest Metro Council member representing District 4, which is my district, in fact. So, welcome, Jecorey. Thank you so much for being here to talk about this upcoming collaboration.
From the school hall to the concert hall to city hall, here we are.
That's right. I mean your background is really special. I can't imagine anybody else has intersected with so many different roles in the music world and now beyond.
Well, I think some people might be surprised that how key music was to getting me to where I am politically. If I wasn't teaching music in schools or making music, I wouldn't have gotten to experience everything that I've experienced and observed that led me to where I am today because I had all of these problems being piled on top of me, on top of the community that I served. And I kept asking myself, what can I do about it? I didn't always feel like me teaching or rapping about some of these issues was full justice, was the full service that I wanted to provide. So this was really a natural evolution for me to eventually become a politician and work on legislation. And here I am, very much so still tied to the music community, trying to make sure I'm looking out for the artists who really give this city the character that it should have. It's all connected. And I'm just glad to be on this journey. I'm glad to be on this journey with you, with the orchestra, and pushing this city forward, pushing our world forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you and I really agree that music is part of a bigger picture. It's not just an ends of itself. You don't just go to see a concert, even if it goes really great. There's a service element to what we both believe in. And I'm kind of curious about how you came to that, because a lot of musicians, and you've talked about this before, very successful rap artists or classical artists never catch that bug of wanting to explore public service. Where did that come from with you?
I think the music education component of my career, my skill set is what kept me anchored in community. It's what kept me anchored in service because, even as a rap artist, rappers tend to be very much so self-interested in terms of what they do and what their output is, whether I'm rapping about the car I have, the jewelry I have, or trying to really objectify women. Rap has this really stereotypical output production value. And as I navigate through the world, as I visit schools, as I have children, I realize quickly that this cannot be what we are teaching our children. This cannot be the end all be all of success. And over time, there's been this ongoing mantra of you got to make it out of the hood. But what I realized throughout my life is that it's not really even about making it out of the hood. What we should be focused on is making something out of the hood, as in turning the hood into everything that it should be and could be. And with that new mindset, I've tried to really embed that in everything I do. And I always talk about how my progression has went from observing music, in my family's church, getting to experience concerts in a family sense, to making music with my friends, producing beats and writing songs, to teaching music, teaching them how to do exactly everything that I taught myself how to do, but literally getting my certificate to teach in schools. And then organizing music, events, working with the orchestra, working with a number of organizations, grass tops and grassroots, to really build power across our music scene. And then as I organize music more and more, I realized you can organize a concert, you can organize anything from a coat drive to a food drive. So now I would consider myself to really just be an organizer, but music organizing has really gotten me to where I am with organizing. And if you think about our elected officials, they're really just glorified community organizers. So that journey it was very just boom, 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 point A to B to C. And here we are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that journey that you've been on with music and where it's gotten you today is quite different than what you'd expect from the typical hip hop star. You've been really focused on the local environment here and in not necessarily sacrificing your connections here and the work that you're trying to do to just build a giant career, just touring around and putting on giant shows at stadiums and things like that. That has not been your vibe and your focus. And I'm just curious how you came to that, because it's unique that you've been so tied to the locality and to serving here in Louisville.
What a lot of people don't process when it comes to hip hop is there is no hip hop. There's no hip hop industry. There are no chart topping singles. There are no Grammys. There are no accolades. There's no nothing. There's no richness. There's no mansions and the cars. And there's none of that without the struggle. Hold on. In fact, I just wrote this on my board not too long ago, and I didn't think about our conversation when I wrote it. Frederick Douglass once said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. And when we look at hip hop, hell, when we look at any like Black celebrity culture, we think about them as the face of progress, the face of success. But what we don't realize is that they really shield the struggle that they exist on top of. You might rap about rags to riches in your song, but there are still people living in rags. You might, be an athlete and making millions of dollars, but the place where you come from, where you were on that basketball team or you were playing in the park, they are still impoverished. So what I've tried to do is really try to create a bridge between those two communities. And anytime I'm around hip hop artists, anytime I'm talking with music heads, industry heads, I remind them, you are where you are in terms of being at the top because of the people at the bottom who molded you into the person that you are, who really give you content for the music that you make. And we can't ever forget that. I think that, I think about this Jay-Z lyric. He says, what's better than one billionaire too? And I always one up him and say, well, what's better than two billionaires? A Black middle class, and making sure that we're not the bottom of society. And that's incredibly important. And we can't ever forget that. We can't ever think about ourselves as individuals. We have to think about the collective uplift of everyone in this country.
That's incredible that you're able to verbalize it in that way. And it leads to my big question, which is how we came to this program. Is Black people in America have obviously been systemically oppressed since they came to this continent. But despite that history, Black culture has always been pretty much paramount at the forefront of the American cultural identity in any genre, whether it's film or comedy or music. People love Black culture, even when side by side there is clear oppression or racism. Even if people don't consider themselves racist, they may have racist beliefs and at the same time love Black culture. How does this fit with your worldview? What does that mean to you as a musician, that history and where it all comes from?
Well, it's interesting for me. I'm like a new vegetarian, and I've been saying this analogy lately. I've never said it out loud to anyone in public, but people in 2020 have had this new like racial awakening with our country, and I'm glad. But they have to realize that calling something racist in America is like calling something meatless in a vegan restaurant. It was built that way on purpose. And everything that we're experiencing and talking about in this awakening that has just happened is really a reflection of the way that America was established. I don't think that our forefathers realized the influence of what we'll get into, these Negro melodies. I don't think they realized the influence of that culture. I don't think they realized the influence that it would have, hundreds of years later, 402 years later, where we look at America and like you just said, Black culture is really prominent. It is one of the biggest exports in this country. But you also have to parallel that with the fact that Black people were one of the biggest imports in this country. So what does that mean for where we are today, and how our music and our art and the products that we produce are really exploited in the same way that we were exploited as humans, or in the case of the 3/5 clause, part of a human.
And that kind of leads to where we are right now, which is that every arts organization, every musical organization, whatever it might be, every cultural organization in the country is going through this reflection period and looking at themselves in the mirror and asking, have we contributed to the challenges and to the inequalities? What is it that we're supposed to do right now, and how do we rethink the future? And I'd like to think that with our partnership over the years and the work that we've been doing at the Louisville Orchestra, that even if we haven't gone all the way and we haven't achieved the goals, which are incredibly challenging to achieve, but we're at least trying to steer in the right direction. But that led us to this very program that we're working on, where we said, rather than exploiting Black music just so we could check a box saying, okay, look, we program more Black composers and we did our job, I thought it would be more valuable as the community deals with now the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's death and this very, very difficult year now behind us, to actually explore the storytelling element of where Black music came from and how it's intersected with American life. Because if you chart it, there is this extraordinary development from the very earliest period of Black people in America as slaves to this moment where I don't know what percentage of culture is influenced by Black culture, but it's probably almost all of it. And so Jecorey, talk us through. I came to you, and you said that you already had an outline for some work that you did in the educational sphere that might work.
Yeah, so I've tried to treat Black History Month as a reminder of American history and Black history being one and the same. And as a musician, as a music teacher, I've used music as that reminder. Traveling to schools from the elementary level up to high schools and some colleges as well, taking a program that really guides us through American music history and just pinpoints, like, here's jazz and how it fits into, the larger landscape of music, and spirituals are connected there, and rock and roll and whatnot. So this program, and you said it perfectly, this program, I would say, is almost like the peak of the work that we've been doing over the years, because the Louisville's orchestra, you might not realize it way before the other orchestras around this country have been looking in the mirror. The orchestra has been on the forefront of innovation when it comes to inclusivity, when it comes to the type of music that you program, the type of musicians that you program. And Teddy, I thought you were crazy for a minute, because you had me on stage rapping about everything that I would be rapping about in the streets, a reflection of everything that I experienced growing up and still living in the West End of Louisville, in front of a symphony orchestra, predominantly white symphony orchestra of people who probably didn't know what I was talking about, or didn't know what that experience was like. But you weren't afraid to put me on that stage, to put that mic in my hand and let it be known. This is our city. This is a reflection of some of the failure within our city, and we have to confront that. And I'm proud of the Louisville Orchestra for doing that. And I think there's plenty of room for us to continue to grow. But I'm really proud of the fact that we've already started growing, 5-6 years ago here in this city with our orchestra.
And I do think that those relationships develop and they have results that you can't necessarily predict. I mean, I know, Jecorey, there are many, many people in this community, especially white folks, maybe they're wealthier, that have come to the orchestra, that have encountered you and developed an understanding of your background and the things you're rapping about because of the platform of the orchestra, which just goes to show that we do have an exceptional way of sharing cultural information and differences that cuts very quickly to what our core understandings and similarities might be. And the people, when they see you perform, they can empathize right away because the music and the artistry is so compelling. which I think is part of this program. I mean, that must have been why, when you talked about Black people have gone through struggles that most folks can't even comprehend, that don't come from that tradition, yet everybody can still identify with struggle and with pain. And when you hear a spiritual that speaks to that, it humanizes all of us, even if that's not your own cultural background, which has to be part of why those songs became the dominant American culture, not just for Black people, but for everyone. And that's what kicks off our program here, right?
Yeah, we're kicking it off with the spiritual known as Go Down Moses, that's, has lyrics talking about a pharaoh in Egypt, and the vocalists, the people who are enslaved, the slaves are saying, "Let my people go, free us." This is a direct reflection of slavery in America, a direct reflection of even today when we think about mass incarceration and we think about all of the oppressive systems that are still on top of people in our country. This kicks off the program. And, from here, we dive into how spirituals transitioned into blues. We started to add instrumentation outside of just, a cappella vocalists in a field. I think to a certain extent, you have to realize that once the transatlantic slave trade occurred, it really created a new tribe of people who were from Africa, West Africans. It created a new culture of people. And those are American people, Black American people in this country that we live in today. I think it was the conductor, he's a British conductor, Leopold, maybe, Stokowski.
Yeah.
He talked about how painters paint pictures on a canvas and musicians paint pictures on silence. And I bring that quote up because you have to think about people, people of different tribes, of different languages being in the depths of these slave ships, sitting in that silence, sitting in that really like dark, literally and figuratively place in their lives, being terrified, not knowing what was going on, not being fed properly, dealing with disease on the ocean. I think there was a birth of a new people out of that. And with that birth of a new people, with that struggle, we found these Negro spirituals in all of it. The spirituals that eventually led on to blues and to jazz and to soul, R&B, rock and roll, hip hop. This was created from that silence because people were silenced. Their culture was stripped from them. And that Leopold quote was important to think about because, that is a perfect example of how we had to make music and make something out of nothing, make music out of that silence.
And that progression that followed from spirituals to the basis for almost all popular music in America. I mean, the building blocks of jazz and blues are the same essential building blocks that you find in everything from rock and roll to hip hop today. And what do you think it was just in the music itself that caught on and became so popular? I mean, because it was very quick, the transition from jazz or ragtime leading to jazz to then becoming ubiquitous throughout American cities. People would go to jazz clubs or jazz halls and dance from the source of that music.
Part of it's bittersweet because you have this music that impacted people emotionally and psychologically and just totally engaged them. And it became the most, some of the most popular genres in the world we're talking about. And at the same time, that music was used to further oppress people or further discriminate against people, because we know out of these spirituals, we saw minstrelsy, we saw blackface get created. The character Jim Crow, who actually lived in Louisville, he was a slave in Louisville that he was handicapped and he was dancing and singing, and someone painted their skin black and then traveled the world mimicking him. He was in Louisville. I think to a certain extent, that music was used to hurt us. But it was also a mechanism that we used and we took back, taking that culture back to help us. Even like getting away from music, thinking about dance and how slaves were forced to dance to stay fit on the ships and on the plantations. The music to a certain extent was also used in that same way. But over time, we took it back and we made it our own. And now we're here because of it. It's a level of resilience that I don't think we've ever seen in history. That resilience that exists in the music is what's so powerful. And it puts you in a place where I can't even put into words sometimes, and you know, because you've been to St. Stephen and you've really like vibed with them and played music with them. When that music hits you, that Black music hits, there really aren't words to describe it. It's an experience. It is a spiritual experience. It's a Negro spiritual experience. I mean, quite literally, it is a spiritual experience when you are in the zone playing this music. It transcends you being on this earth, so to speak.
Well, and I'm sure that there's a fine line, especially when people talk about it in a joking way or a stereotypical way of how Black people have a certain, affinity for rhythm, even just the old joke about knowing which beat to clap on, things like that. It's obviously, it's kind of comedic the way people say it. And I think there are sometimes, racial overtones to that kind of, talking about Black people being able to dance and have better sense of rhythm than other folks. I'm not sure it always comes from, the right place, but there is something to that when you go to the source of a Black church that continues in the gospel tradition and you feel the power of that music. That's not just for fun. There is a deep sense of that music getting you to feel things that aren't just your normal emotions. It's not everyday human emotions. It does elevate you and puts you in a state, almost like an ecstatic state. And I've never seen that in the same way. I've never seen that same kind of feeling come from any other musical situation other than what a Black gospel church choir can provide in that moment. It's just otherworldly.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're gonna like transition to another conversation. I wanted to like really touch on something that I didn't think about in full until Dr. King's birthday recently, and that Dr. Martin Luther King had music on his mind when he was killed. If you don't know who he is, like the most, I would say, progressive front runner. He was one of the founding fathers of civil rights in this country. Like he was the Black leader of American history. And right before he was killed, April 4th, 1968, he was on the balcony at his hotel. He saw a musician, I think his name was Ben Branch. He was a saxophonist that was booked to perform that night with King at a rally. And he told him to play a Negro spiritual, Precious Lord. And he told him to play it real pretty. He emphasized, play this the best you've ever played it. And the saxophonist, because, musicians are confident in what we do. He said, I always play it real pretty. And King just really said, no, but tonight, make it special, especially for me. And the saxophonist said, all right, Dr. King, I got you. As soon as Dr. King turned around, history was changed forever. He was shot and killed. And I just want to read some of the lyrics from that spiritual, because as he was killed, keep in mind, he had just requested a song especially for him. And these were some of the lyrics from that song. When the darkness appears and the night draws near and the day is past and gone, at the river I stand, guide my feet, hold my hand, take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. So the spiritual about being led home as he was being led home was on his mind right before he was taken from us, right before he was assassinated. And that's incredibly important for us to think about as we unpack what music means to our society. It is that important that I would say the most important Black leader in history was thinking about music right before he was taken off of this earth.
That's just unbelievable and overwhelming. And it actually transitions into this other part of the conversation, which I think can be used in both this discussion and then the introduction for the rap school, which is that you think about the words of people like Dr. King or Malcolm X or Barack Obama, for that matter, and the way language has been used and has been able to cut across different boundaries and backgrounds and demographics by Black leaders. There must be some connection between those great orators and those great political and civil rights figures and the basis for hip hop and rap, which takes that same power of the word but intertwines it with music. And I'm curious, what is the genre of hip hop and rap kind of mean historically, and what power does it have for you, Jecorey?
Well, you just hit the nail on the head. You think about Malcolm X, some of his most punchliney quotes from his speeches, he's rhyming and he's saying it in a way that's going to resonate with you. Uh, Muhammad Ali, same thing. Same thing with Dr. Martin Luther King. Those are my three Black heroes. And when you hear me speak today, in the way that I try and connect words and make something resonate with people through a political lens, it is a direct reflection of hip hop, of rap, of lyricism, and doing what I can to put something together in a poetic way so that it sticks with you outside of the conversation that we have. I do it all the time. I'm sure you notice, I'm sure others notice, but yeah, like without a doubt, rap, I wouldn't be here without rap. I wouldn't be, an effective communicator if it wasn't for rap and having that skill set as a part of something that I've worked on over the years. And really, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, they were rapping before rap was rap. Hip hop really coming into light at the end of the 70s. These leaders had been doing that, and I think to a certain extent that also helped influence where rap became that braggadocio, that style, that vibrato, that speech part, that being an orator, that part of rap is a direct reflection of the civil rights speakers of the 60s and coming into the 70s as well.
And Muhammad Ali is that intersection, because you're seeing somebody who is a civil rights leader for sure, and a comedian for sure. He makes people laugh with the way he talks, and he knows that. And he's also very self-awarely bragging and talking smack about his opponents, and he's doing it in verse a lot of times, direct rhyming. I mean, very clearly an early form of rap, even if it wasn't set to a groove. And so I wonder, what influence does Ali have on your viewpoint and your way of speaking?
I am Ali. I think we got a whole festival named I Am Ali. Muhammad Ali is hip hop. He was hip hop without a doubt. Before hip hop was hip hop, and when I put anything together, he's in the back of my mind. I think music is, of course, self-expression, but it's equally self-discovery. And when we worked on that rap opera for Ali's life, the greatest, I discovered myself in a whole new way. I saw myself in a whole new way through expressing myself, through understanding and unpacking Ali. So for me, especially being a young Black man from the West end of Louisville, from Parkland specifically, Muhammad Ali is everything.
And I mean, we've started this rap school together here, which is kind of unusual, but it's based on the whole idea that the orchestra, as a big institution and a mainline, predominantly historically white institution, can be the forum for somebody like Muhammad Ali's life and can host rap in a way that's honest. And so we've been working on this rap school together to offer young people the chance to perform with the orchestra as a rap artist, using Muhammad Ali's life as the inspiration for their rap. And so what's that like to work with people who are still in middle school, and how are they interpreting Ali's life, and how are they thinking about their self-expression?
This ties to our conversation earlier, because I've been around the world working with symphony orchestras, rapping with symphony orchestras. And there is no better feeling than seeing our youth have that same experience. Seeing them perform in front of that orchestra feels better to me than me performing in front of any orchestra. And I love to see it. It puts us in a place where not only can you see the orchestra, but you can be the orchestra. And when you are being the orchestra, you don't even have to fit into the lines or the constraints of what an orchestra is. You can rap with an orchestra. You can do your music with that orchestra that maybe you didn't even feel like you had access to. Well, now we're not even just like breaking barriers, those barriers are gone. We've really erased them. If you think about the way that we parallel hip hop and we bring, Black youth from our inner city, from our Black community, from the west end of Louisville, and you put them on stage with this institution that, as we know, as historically really had a lack of access for the same people that are now on stage performing in front of it. It is so powerful. It means so much to me, to our larger community, to those youth. It's very different. And then also as a percussionist, I'm used to being in the back. Like Black people had to sit in the back of the bus. Now I'm in the front now. I feel like Rosa saying, nah, I'm here. And our youth get that experience now. And it's something that I believe is life-changing for them. Because as I said, you don't just see the orchestra, now you can be the orchestra.
What advice, this is a basic question, but what advice would you give to anybody that's an aspiring hip hop artist themselves, a young person, maybe a fourth or a fifth grader that's going to be watching our rap school video?
If I had to give anyone advice, if you want to be a hip hop artist, I would say everything that you learn in school, especially like English and literacy, language arts, but even outside of that, everything that you learn in school, I want you to pay extra close attention to it. Because the more you know there, the more you can show it within rap, the more you can really exemplify within rap. And then even outside of that school, your community that you live in, what are you experiencing? What are you going through? What do you notice? Pay attention. That's my advice. Pay attention. Everything that you're learning in school and everything that you're learning outside of that school can be used as a tool for rap fuel. See, I just had to, I had to rhyme.
That's pretty great.